Okay, who's 17 here? We got one person, so you're about to cast your first vote. Who's 18 here? Did you vote in this election, the one that just happened?
Texas?
Yes.
Yes.
You voted in Texas. Who's 19, 20, or 21 here? Raise your hands. Has anyone voted for president more than once? So you're all looking at first-time voters or people who voted for the first time for president in 2016. Are you proud or embarrassed about American democracy? Embarrassed. Tell me, who's embarrassed? Raise your hands. Why are you embarrassed? Go ahead, somebody. Just go ahead, don't look at each other. Who's embarrassed? Okay, you raised your hands before.
Me, since nobody's gonna speak up, me.
Go ahead, why are you embarrassed?
I think it's very embarrassing that that outside countries are able to influence our election through social media. It's very embarrassing. I've personally experienced this, like the spam accounts. They're very weird. Two of them actually added me on Facebook during election season, and they appear to be like attractive women, and they say like they have like President Trump and like big weird like. It's just very weird, and that's very embarrassing that countries have like the data and the capability to seriously influence our elections by just using social media.
Right there. You have a microphone right next to you. Hey guys, look to each other. You're going to work together as a team, and you're going to show your parents and grandparents here that you know how to make this work. Go ahead.
I'm honestly embarrassed that the person that the majority of the country supported and voted for can still lose an election. It just seems wrong to me.
Somebody else. One more, right there.
I'm really embarrassed, a lot on the same vein with influence in elections, not only with foreign involvement, but corporations. You have a lot of politicians, especially corporate politicians, that'll take money from corporations and then do the bidding of those corporations. Instead, we should have a democracy where we have politicians that are influenced by the people and not by the folks who are paying their bills.
So by the way, you're going to get a chance to ask them questions, so if you want to take notes, you should feel free to do so. Who's proud of the democracy? Who thinks it's working? Any of you guys?
I just wanted to comment on her point about why she was disappointed or didn't like it. Because if you're basing it off of the way that outside countries can influence us through social media, then you should be proud of the fact that the Trump administration has been working with social media groups to bring that down and tame that. And I think it's proud of our democracy because we've been raised on this ideal of like we're individuals and we're going to work for ourselves, and I'm proud of that we've come so far on our own.
Somebody else?
I'm definitely proud of our democracy because, well, the people do actually pick who is our president. When Hillary Clinton was running, when I noticed she was running, I was like, oh, she's going to win. She's a career politician. Career politicians always win. And when Trump won, it gave me hope that the people actually do pick our president because everyone was so against Trump, you know, the media was against Trump. No one ever thought he was going to win, and he did win.
I was going to say that I was kind of embarrassed because I feel like the people didn't really pick because the Electoral College had a big part to play in it, and urban areas are neglected with representation election cycle after election cycle, and I feel like districting and gerrymandering have a lot of negative effects on our process.
One more in the back row. Go ahead.
I would touch on both points. I would say what was embarrassing is this is the first time for our generation to be able to vote, and social media and it being able to push its own agenda greatly affected the vote or affected our opinions, and it made it more about the hoopla, and we heard more of a he said, she said versus policies. It seemed more to be emotionally driven. And I'm proud of the votes because we still represent a great thing on this planet, and that's democracy, the opportunity for the people of a nation to be able to have a say in what happens.
So I want a show of hands. How many of you voted for Hillary Clinton? We'll see if you guys are going to admit this. How many of you voted for Donald Trump? I bet you've never heard that before. People actually, this is Texas after all. So, I also want to ask you a couple questions about the Constitution. I'm going to start in the back row. We're going to go all the way across, then we're going to come across here. When I say the Constitution, give me a word or phrase that comes to mind first, and then you'll pass the microphone down. Constitution.
Experiment.
Rights.
It's still working. Amendable.
Principles.
The building blocks.
Concrete.
Rights. Foundation.
Government.
We the people.
Freedom.
The Constitution.
Principle.
Individual rights.
Founding principles.
The basics.
Equality.
Conservatism.
God-given rights.
Protections.
Outdated.
Whoa. Okay. Why outdated?
Well, in a lot of cases, while they were at the time of its inception, the Constitution allowed for a lot of different things to go on, personal freedoms, things that a lot of folks during that time didn't have. Well, now we live in more of an age where it's not necessarily, most countries around the world are free. We have freedom of expression and freedom of religion, things like that. But I do believe
Do you
that
guys
there.
agree? Do you guys agree? Why are they wrong?
Well, while you can say no, you're allowed to say no. And at that time, you weren't allowed to say no. But I do feel like in America, we kind of take for granted that while we can speak and we have a lot of controversy, we can say what we think and not be physically attacked for those things. While we do have verbal attacks, you can say what you want and not fear for losing your job. In some cases, yes, but I'm a freedom of speech absolutist, whether someone believes with me or doesn't believe with me.
Got a comment?
So this is going to be weird because I'm going to agree and disagree with Jacob. I slightly disagree that the Constitution is outdated, but I do agree that as a result of like the technological revolution and like the unprecedented rate of like the spread of information and the kind of ways that a small group of people, hackers, people in the know, can actively manipulate how we perceive our environment, and also the level of knowledge that the average person has now as compared to the time of the Constitution. Some of the precedents in the Constitution, like an electoral college, don't necessarily accommodate for the kind of willingness that everyone has to speak at this point that they didn't have when they were, in pastoral times.
The whole point of the add and disagree, the whole point of the Constitution was that it wasn't meant to address particular issues or particular times. It was meant to be just basic building blocks. I mean, there was a debate over whether to include the Bill of Rights or not, and James Madison initially opposed it because as soon as you start enumerating rights, then you start assuming that there are rights that you don't have as an individual. And when he decided to write it, that he needed to write it himself to ensure that those sorts of things would be protected. And I actually grew up in Canada, so freedom of speech is something that you do need to take, you can't take for granted, because although Canada is a place that would be seen as a free country, you can be jailed for expressing your opinion. There is a case of a pastor who said something contrary to the popular narrative about gay marriage, which I may or may not agree with at all, but he should have the right to voice his opinion, and he was fined and jailed for it. So we can't take that for granted.
I was just going to say that I don't think the Constitution should be just a bare bones building blocks type of document. I do believe that it is lacking in a lot of protections, like the Equal Rights Amendment still has yet to be passed. I believe that when the Constitution was written, it did neglect women, it neglected people of color, and I believe that we have added a lot of useful things onto the Constitution since it was written, and I feel like we should keep that momentum going. We shouldn't be afraid to amend the Constitution and add more protections.
If I may speak to your point about women, I actually took a class on the Constitution, and there was no rule against women voting. In some states, women actually did vote before 1918. The reason that they changed it is because it gave urban communities an electoral advantage over rural communities because it was easier for urban women to vote than it was for rural women to vote. So that wasn't a case of discrimination against women.
I don't think it's true that the Constitution is outdated, because I think the beauty of it is that it was written so long ago, and it still leads us to a country that can have checks and balances and can keep Congress and the executive branch and the judicial branch in check, and that is something that other countries don't have. And as to speak on the freedom of speech, we are the only country that has true freedom of speech, and it's something that we need to cherish and not talk about whether something should be said or shouldn't be said, because as soon as you start to amend things and you limit people's speech, then they can limit your speech right after.
When it comes to the Constitution and you're talking about amending it and changing whether it be the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, or the Third, if you open the door to start making changes to those amendments, it starts with one, you're opening the door for the rest of them.
I'd say if you say the Constitution is outdated, it's built upon the philosophical teachings of what we hold dear in our Western society. Rousseau, Locke, if you start saying that's outdated, then you're saying that the principles of how we operate are outdated.
By the way, there's some really smart kids up here. Go ahead.
Any high school educated person can tell you that the Founding Fathers knew it was an experiment, and every word that every person here has said holds truth to what the Constitution is today. It's viable, it's resourceful, and it's definitely up for open interpretation. That's what it is today. And the way it's left for open interpretation is if you vote for the right people to remain in office, those are the people who are representing us in the end.
Yeah, and I just want to finish up by adding that, yeah, we were founded as a nation of inclusion, right? We were founded as a nation where people fleeing persecution came here to establish how they wanted to live and how they wanted to establish values. And as we continue to be a nation unique in the world that accepts people in crisis in this country to form better lives, that means that what we value as a society is going to change. And that means that different priorities are going to come up that people are going to talk about. And I think that's really critical that we continue to allow that to happen, even if it doesn't always represent exactly what we believe.
One point I wanted to make about the Electoral College is that there's been a lot of false information going around that it was used to appease the slave states, I think. But when I researched it more, it was an improvement on democracy. So when the country was founded, it was based on other democracies. So the Electoral College was meant to be better. So we are better in that way. And people who say that, the popular vote winner losing is kind of backwards, but they don't really think about it from the standpoint that it's not the United States, it's the United States, so they don't want, California and New York outvoting everybody just because everyone lives there, so.
And if our electoral college is broken, if we got rid of the electoral college, all of the politicians would politician in certain states and not other states. We need the electoral college. We have to have the electoral college.
Okay, I have something to say about that. Okay.
I'm going to respectfully disagree, and it's probably not going to be too popular in this crowd. But I think if you're a politician, every vote should count. So if you're saying just California has an advantage because they have more people, Hillary Clinton won by 3 million. So Donald Trump could go anywhere in the country and get those 3 million votes. So it doesn't mean that it's not equal. It means that it's actually more equal if you take the popular vote.
Yeah, by taking the popular vote.
Hold on. With all due respect, it bothers me when conservative speakers can't come on campus because they get booed. And this is happening all across America, where there are universities where there's not a single conservative speaker because they are booed and they are intimidated. We who believe that freedom of speech does matter and we should have a balance of ideas. When we talk about diversity and inclusion, we believe it in terms of ideas, not just in terms of gender or ethnicity. We have to practice the same thing. And for those, because you guys have figured out kind of where some of the audience is, the fact that you're willing to speak up makes me respect you even more.
I think the electoral college is flawed because I think that the popular vote should be counted more, because the reason why is that these states like California and Texas and New York, they have the most people living there. So they have the most like votes that should be counted, and yeah.
So I want to move outside the Electoral College. One more general question, then we're going to do the dials to react to some stuff. You see the campaigns, you see the partisanship. You're living through this, and you're going to live this for the next 60 or 70 years based on science. Some of you will be alive 80 years from now. It's incredible. Are the campaigns that are being waged, is the partisanship that is being communicated, does that make you proud to be an American? When you look at 2016 and 2018, are they doing what you want them to do? Raise your hands if you say yes. Raise your hands if you say no. Then what message do you have for them and for your leaders about how they should communicate to you, about how they should practice their politics? What would you tell them?
I personally would say, I know it gets hard to not bring in like personal things in the slander, but can we just talk about the issues? I feel like if we really had people who were next to each other, regardless of party, really talking about what they believe in, what they're gonna do, and what they wanna change, it would make it so much better. Politics would be doing what they need to do instead of like slandering each other with attacks and insults.
Personally, I think the left tends to resort to character attacks and, name calling and stuff like that. And there's no progression on getting on with the actual issues. Like, we can't have, a civil discourse and actually talk about anything because everyone's too busy calling everyone names. So,
I mean, I'll be the first to admit that in 2016, I engaged in some character attacks. Not proud of it, but also looking at where we are now, we know that that doesn't work. Democrats were stupid. My party was stupid for engaging in that. But we look at, Obamacare versus the Affordable Care Act. In talking to friends and family in Iowa, Texas, New Hampshire, I know and I've heard and I've seen that just by changing what it's called, even though it's the same darn thing, you get a completely different reaction. And it's all about polarizing a message when at the end of the day, you're talking about the same thing.
Go ahead.
I feel like there has been a lot of hypocrisy from both sides. It's brought out a lot of the pettiness out of people, and it's really disheartening to see that we can't hold the conversation and at the end of the day agree that we're all Americans and that we all want the better for the better outcome for the country. And I feel like we need to move past the pettiness and come to the agreement that we can have disagreements and still be Americans.
By the way, just for the record, I love that. I love that. That's exactly what we should be doing. Go ahead.
I just think the partisanship has hurt the country overall because, as with the 2016 election, it just seems like the Democrats go further left and the Republicans go further right. And I was a Rubio girl in 2016, and so I couldn't get with Trump because he was just too crazy to me. But it's like, now that he's been in office, he's warmed up to me more. But I just feel like it's hurting overall because with the Kavanaugh hearings, it seemed like that was just a partisan game overall, and nothing could get done because nobody was willing to flip a side except for the few that did, and except for Joe Manchin. But it seems like that hurts the country overall because it's blocking the process that was built by the Constitution.
Go ahead.
One of our foundations, along with the Constitution, is also supposed to be that we're a chapel on the hill. And we're not pulling that point across when we're using the name-calling and derogatory language. We're capable of doing better. And the conversations that we, as Americans, need to happen, especially with our leaders, needs to be peaceful ones where resolutions are found and we can meet in the middle, not where we're pointing fingers and then go home and speak poorly about each other over dinner.
I just wanted to talk about a personal experience. I was pretty much raised in a conservative Christian home. Both my parents, I have 3 siblings, and one brother and 2 sisters, and we were all raised the same way. And since then, my 2 sisters, they're Democrats, and they lean left now, even though that's not how they were raised. And just talking about the name calling, I can tell you from personal experience that it's divided my family and personally. To where, we didn't have Thanksgiving together, I'll be honest. And
Hold on. Not that you didn't talk politics, that you actually had some people did not show up for the Thanksgiving dinner.
It's actually been a year since I've seen my sisters.
Isn't family the most important?
Absolutely, and I'm getting to where the name calling, and because I lean right, I'm ridiculed. I'll give a great example during the Kavanaugh hearings, because I sided with him, and that they said that I hate women. I don't stand for women because I sided with him, my own sisters, and it's just. There's got to be a line to where you can just come together and agree to disagree, and just agree to just, you side one way or the other, and it's hurt our family.
The thing with politics today is if you lean towards the right like I do, if you're on a college campus and someone, the professor starts talking a little more towards the left and you try to stand up and talk, share your opinion and voice it out, man, you're outcasted by almost the entire group. You are literally the elephant in the room. No pun intended there.
Okay, I do the jokes here.
And it is very hard, like he was saying with the whole Kavanaugh hearing, it's like, well, should I speak my voice out? Should I say, hey, I support the man. I think his principles are down to the core, what I support and what I believe in, what I grew up. What I was raised to believe in, and now it's, well, should I say it? Am I going to be outcasted? Am I going to be brought down by others?
So going off what he said, I feel like that is deplorable. So you have, as you already know, I'm pretty left-leaning. But I believe that in order to get your point across, yelling across the aisle isn't going to do that. Calling people names, calling them deplorable, calling them racist, calling them anti-Semitic, things like that, that's not going to touch people's hearts. Talking policy and things that actually affect people's lives and actually will impact them, that is how you are supposed to go about politics. That is what our founding fathers believed in.
I agree with you. I'm the only conservative in a 4-generation household of long, hard-leaning Democrats. And it's gotten to the point where we... oh, I need it. It's gotten to the point where we have a hard time talking politics, and it devolves into a great-grandmother, a grandmother, and a mother all shouting at me. And I think at the end of the day, what we need to be able to do is we need to be able to put our party affiliation to the side and actually talk about how this all impacts us as Americans and as citizens. If we can't do that, then how are we going to make this thing work?
And also, we need to stop making our viewpoints our personality. Our viewpoints are who we are, and when you insult someone's personality, we get insulted, and our viewpoints have become our personality. So when someone insults that, we get angry. It's natural to get angry. So we have to separate our personality from our political views.
I also lean right and with a pretty liberal household. And I also work for a liberal company. I'm the only conservative in that company. And I constantly feel like ridiculed, and people make snide comments and look at me funny, and so I just feel like there needs to be some sort of, we can meet in the middle and just everything just be okay, and where it doesn't affect my work life. Like, politics shouldn't have to affect where I go to work.
Okay, let's put the microphones down. Let's put them on the ground. Grab your dials. Now you get to see what we do. Or when you ever see the Fox stuff, here we go. So everyone got a dial? If you lean right, turn your dial to 1. If you lean left, turn your dial to 2. If you lean right, turn your dial to 1. If you lean left, turn your dial to 2. Does everybody have the correct number? Actually, that's almost identical to what it is nationwide. So take it. By the way, everyone in the back of the room is Tyler. Tyler's been my technician guy, made all this stuff I do on television happen. So Tyler, thank you for all that you do. And I never ever do that, so this is actually good that I've done it. So you all heard my explanation before. The more that you agree with what's being said, the higher you go. If you agree completely, what should you be at? 100. The more you disagree, the lower you go. If you completely disagree, what number should you be at? 0. 50 is neutral. Let's make sure the dials work. I'm going to do one with them. I'm going to try to make this work. So you're going to react to me, okay? Start reacting. Everyone go to 50, please. Let's go to neutral. Very good. Start reacting to me now. If there's one thing our country is committed to, is that we must do things today to make for a better tomorrow. That we have a solemn responsibility, as Thomas Jefferson said, to leave our country better than what we found it. And that means that we need to raise taxes on hardworking Americans so we can take that money and spend it on the children and spend that on the children of illegal immigrants. Do you see the difference? Okay, let's do one more. So you guys know you go down if you don't like it, you go up if you like it. One more. How many pounds overweight am I? I'm standing in front of you. How many pounds overweight? You have 5 seconds. Turn your dial to the number of pounds overweight I am. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold on. Freeze it right there. Freeze it right there. I have always said Democrats are meaner than Republicans. So everyone go to 50, please. We're going to pull up the first clip. And this is one of my, hold on. This is one of my favorite clips. This is not a real politician. And I may tell you to stop. I may tell him to hold the video at one point. I'll just say pause it. But this is from the TV show Newsroom. And this is one of the most famous segments. And this, I think, is one of the best articulations of America in every possible way. So everybody go to 50. Does anyone have any questions how this works? Let's do it. Everyone at 15. You guys will watch the responses. You guys are going to hear it behind you, but you're going to watch it there.
Go ahead. Hi, my name is Jenny. I'm a sophomore, and this is for all three of you. Can you say in one sentence or less what, you know what I mean? Can you say why America is the greatest country in the world?
Diversity and opportunity.
Lewis?
Freedom and freedom. So let's keep it that way.
Will?
The New York Jets.
No, I'm going to hold you to an answer on that. What makes America the greatest country in the world?
Well, Lewis and Sharon said it. Diversity and opportunity and freedom and freedom.
I'm not letting you go back to the airport without answering the question.
Everyone go back to 50. Turn your dials back to 50. And then react to what happens here.
Well, our Constitution is a masterpiece. James Madison was a genius. The Declaration of Independence is, for me, the single greatest piece of American writing. You don't look satisfied.
Keep reacting.
One's a set of laws and the other's a declaration of war. I want a human moment from you. What about the people? Why is America
not the greatest country in the world, Professor? That's my answer.
React.
You're saying...
Yes.
Let's talk about...
Fine. Sharon, the NEA is a loser. Yeah, it accounts for a penny out of her paycheck, but he gets to hit you with it anytime he wants. It doesn't cost money. It costs votes. It costs airtime and column inches. You know why people don't like liberals? Because they lose. If liberals are so fucking smart, how come they lose so goddamn always? Hey,
react.
With a straight face, you're going to tell students that America is so star-spangled awesome that we're the only ones in the world who have freedom? Canada has freedom. Japan has freedom. The UK, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, Belgium has freedom. So 207 sovereign states in the world, like 180 of them have freedom.
All right.
And yeah, you, sorority girl, just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, there's some things you should know. And one of them is, there is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Now, none of this is the fault of a 20-year-old college student, but you nonetheless are, without a doubt, a member of the worst generation ever, So when you ask what makes us the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yosemite?
Pause it. Pause it. Keep your dials in your hands and grab your microphones. The entire time, the Republicans have been down below where the screen goes. And the Democrats were at one point above where the screen goes. 3 of you tell me why America isn't the greatest country on the face of the globe, and 3 of you tell me why it is. Because this is what is happening to this country right now. You have now seen what I hear, what I told you about before, you've seen it come alive. Explain it to me. I don't care what order you go in, and you go first.
I think America is the greatest country in the world because from the beginning of the foundation of this country, it's always been about freedom of speech, freedom of religion. I can believe what I want and I can say what I want. And I know that that is never going to be a matter of life or death for me. I'll always be able to do that.
I don't think America is the greatest country in the world because of the fact of what he said. How can we be the greatest when we don't have the greatest education? How can we be the greatest when black women have a 243% chance of dying in childbirth than white women, their white counterparts, no matter what their socioeconomic status is? Why are we not that good at science? Why are our people getting poorer and poorer, but profits are rising dramatically?
I believe it is the greatest because it's our home, which we should always love our home. And also, we live in a country where a woman just ran for president, and 2 years we elected a black president. This is the greatest country in the world.
This is the greatest country in the world, and the reason I say that is because of the Constitution that protects us with freedom of speech, freedom of religion. You can serve whatever God you believe in, and I don't think we're the most perfect country. I think we have flaws. We're never going to be perfect, but as Ronald Reagan said, our better days are ahead of us.
I don't think it's the greatest country. That's not to say that it's not a good country. It just means that we still have work to be done. And there's other countries that are doing stuff better than us, such as healthcare, such as protections for LGBT people or African Americans. And just because we're lacking in those places, that means we might not be the best, but it doesn't mean we're not good.
I do not believe America is the greatest country in the world because we still have a lot of problems we need to address. Like, for example, in my grandmother's lifetime, there was segregation. We had decades of slavery and apartheid in this country, housing covenants saying that you may not sell this house to a Negro. All of this was not that long ago. We still have institutional racism in our government that cannot be ignored. I feel like a lot of people want to ignore it, and that causes a lot of problems, saying, like, for example, we had a black president. Yes, we did, but that doesn't erase the racism that a lot of people face every day.
Last one.
So we're not the best country, we're not the worst country, but I will say I'm not proud of our country. I'm not proud of where we are now, but I'm also really, really proud that we're one of the quickest countries to change, for better or for worse. And I know at the end of the day, when we have the chance to take a hard look at our politics, our policies, and who's in office, and who's influencing our elections, we're gonna be able to make change quicker than most other countries.
Okay, everyone, pick up your dials. Microphones go back down. We don't need to see the end of this. Let's go to the next segment. I'm going to be showing you a number of elected officials from both sides. Everyone go to 50, and let's do the reaction. Everyone at 50, please. There's one Democrat not at 50.
As I look out at the audience, I see the next generation of American leaders. I see the promise of our future. I see the strength and love of the American spirit. And because of young people like you, I am more confident than ever in the future of the United States. Together, we will make America greater than ever before. I mean that. We're going to make America greater than ever before, and we're on our way. You see what's going on? We're building up military.
Everyone back to 50, please.
For all the young people in this room and those who are watching, know that this country belongs to you.
React.
To all of you, from every background and walk of life. If you or your parents are immigrants, know that you are part of a proud American tradition, the infusion of new cultures, talents, and ideas, generation after generation, that has made us the greatest country on earth. If your family doesn't have much money, I want you to remember that in this country, plenty of folks, including me and my husband, we started out with very little, but with a lot of hard work and a good education, anything is possible, even becoming president. That's what the American dream is all about.
Grab your microphones. You weren't expecting that.
Nope.
She unified them. Nothing unifies them, and she actually unified them. I want three of you who are on the right to tell me why Michelle Obama inspired you there, because in the media, on right-of-center groups, she gets no respect at all. Go ahead.
I think what she said should just be bipartisan overall. She didn't say anything that was partisan whatsoever. This is our country. We should be able to feel that we can grow and change this country and make it better than it already is, because it's such a great country. And the same with Trump. I know I'm supposed to not speak about that, but I feel like they were both equally bipartisan comments. It's just speaking on the future of this country and giving us hope on the things that we can do and the power that we can have if we try and work hard and get a good education.
Is this your country? Do you feel like you own this place?
I respect it.
No, over here.
Oh.
I mean, I don't feel like I own the country. Property that I paid for, I feel like I own. But we're all in this together. We're all on the same team. There's no changing that. And whether you think that we can do better, you're right, we can always do better. The miracle of being in this country is that we have opportunity to try, to improve. Sometimes we don't always do it, but we can keep going, which is what we have done.
I agree with that, and I do agree with what Michelle Obama said. Folks, the American dream is not dead. Whoever tells you it's dead isn't working hard enough to achieve the greatest outcome that we can get in this country. As a proud son of two immigrants who came here the right way and legally and who raised me the right way, I can tell you they worked their tails off to get me where I am now, to get where they are themselves now. Working hard in this country is something that you can do. It's something that everyone can afford. I don't care if you're starting from the bottom, if you're starting from the top, you can always get somewhere.
I just want to say that, we have access to social science now. We have access to statistics. Like, we can see that people who are born in disadvantaged situations have a lower chance of reaching a higher income status in their lifetime. Like, us as children, as a result of decisions that have been made before we were born, are going to change our ability to earn in our lifetime. Like, these are large macroeconomic, statistically valid forces that impact our ability to work hard. Yes, I believe in a puritanical American work ethic that everyone should try, and everyone should try and be their best selves. That's why the idea of are we the greatest country on the earth is stupid, because it should be, can we be a better country tomorrow? It should be a growth-oriented mindset. But if we take these cities that we don't fund and we don't give them an access to education, and then we have a whole group of people that we're putting in prison systems, that we're putting in an inefficient healthcare system, that we're not supporting economically, then they're just going to be a burden in the long term. If we give everyone a better chance from the beginning, you have more innovators, you have better economic growth. It is an economic issue to support people who are disadvantaged, not a social and moral one.
Okay, microphones down. Grab your dials. Let's do a couple more. Everybody at 50, please. And momentarily, you're going to get a chance to ask them questions. Everyone at 50. Democrats at 50.
But I do know this. You're about to enter into a world filled with hypocrisy and doublespeak. A world in which your limo to the airport is often a half hour late. In addition to not even being a limo at all, is oftentimes a Lincoln Town Car. You're about to enter a world where you ask your new assistant Jamie to bring you a tall, non-fat latte, and he comes back with a short soy cappuccino. Guess what, Jamie? You're fired. Not too hard to get right, my friend.
Go to the next one. Go to the next one.
A wo-
If it's the comedy one, skip it.
So the young people here and the young people out there, do not ever let anyone make you feel like you don't matter or like you don't have a place in our American story, because you do. And you have a right to be exactly who you are. But I also want to be very clear. This right isn't just handed to you. No, this right has to be earned every single day. You cannot take your freedoms for granted. Now, just like generations who've come before you, you have to do your part to preserve and protect those freedoms. And that starts right now, when you're young. Right now, you need to be preparing yourself to add your voice to our national conversation. You need to prepare yourself to be informed and engaged as a citizen, to serve and to lead, to stand up for our proud American values and to honor them in your daily lives. And that means getting the best education possible so you can think critically, so you can express yourself clearly, so you can get a good job and support yourself and your family, so you can be a positive force in your communities. And when you encounter obstacles,
Let's do one more. Skip it. I don't think they're in a good mood. Do you want a comedy segment? Okay, we'll try. Yes, do the one that we had picked out. Let's see how this goes.
In 2000, I told graduates, don't be afraid to fail. Well, now I'm here to tell you that though you should not fear failure, you should do your very best to avoid it.
React.
Nietzsche famously said, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. What he failed to stress is that it almost kills you. Disappointment stings, and for driven, successful people like yourselves, it is disorienting. What Nietzsche should have said is, whatever doesn't kill you makes you watch a lot of Cartoon Network and drink mid-price Chardonnay at 11 in the morning. Now, by definition, commencement speakers at an Ivy League college.
So my question to you, grab your microphones again. When a politician says to you that the future is yours, and I'm going to start to call on you because you cannot sit here and not participate. When an elected official, doesn't matter what party it is, says the future is yours, you have no limits. Work hard, play by the rules, you can get ahead. What do you say back to them?
I agree with it to a certain extent, but there's outside factors, as he said, that may come into play.
Such as?
You grow up in a non-developed area, you know, southern Los Angeles, that's not the best area. You want to go to Harvard. You don't get a great education. That may be difficult to do, versus if you grew up in a nicer part of San Diego, say, per se, and you wanted to go to Harvard. But if you worked hard enough, you can get there, because there is people that become successful, but that's the 1 in 3 million, not the 1 in 300 from a nicer area.
When you say the future is yours, what do you mean when people are killed because they're black and they're in their car and they're shot and killed? What do you mean when those people in the Jewish temple are shot and killed? The opportunity, you don't have the opportunity to succeed. It's taken from you. You aren't given the opportunity. You aren't able to try. It's taken right from you.
Do you control your future?
Of course. Of course, 100%.
Do you have limits?
I would say so. Everyone has their limits.
Is there systemic discrimination in America?
I do believe so, yes.
Does that hold you back?
As a young white woman, I do not believe so.
You're upset.
Yeah.
Tell me why.
I personally, like, I have control over my future. I totally agree with that. But I had barriers that set me back. I went to a really prestigious school in Washington last year. I didn't have the resources to help me get through. Financially, I couldn't attend. However, I decided to pursue my dreams, and now I'm working like towards my dream career. So there are certain things that make things very hard for you, especially I'm biracial too, so like my family's white, and you know, my dad's not around, but my family's white, so that makes it a little weirder too when you're like with your white family and then there's me. And people think, you know, weird things like, oh, where did you get this child from? And how it's, you know. But there are things that do prohibit my future. But just me personally, like, I always strive forward to find another option and do what's best for me. But there are tons of things that have prohibited me from doing things in my life because of who I am.
I believe that how you were born determines whether or not you can live the American dream.
Do you guys agree with that?
No.
Yes.
Raise your hands if you agree with her. Raise your hands if you agree. Raise your hands if you disagree. Why do you think they disagree?
I believe that it's easy to see that every single person has an equal opportunity if that's how you were raised. I believe some people are born in some more disadvantaged circumstances. For example, my mother came from a really poor background, but she did end up going to college under mountains of student debt. But because she went to college, she's able to afford to pay for my college in full. So that when I get older, I'll be able to pay for my children's college, and it'll be easier for them. They won't have the debt. They will be in a higher class than I was. But the way the college is set up, it's very classist. It's easy to keep the rich people rich and the poor poor, especially with like legacy students in Ivy League colleges. The system is set up to keep the advantaged people advantaged, and I feel like the way you were born does stack the odds against you or help you.
You're a white male. Do you feel advantaged?
I actually do, completely. And coming from my own experiences, because I was born into a white family, I'm a male, I have all these opportunities, and we're upper middle class. So, for example, this past summer, I was able to have an internship at a television network in Los Angeles, and that cost a lot of money to live in Los Angeles, and I realized that some people that don't have my advantages wouldn't be able to get that step up in their career like I did. And it's not to make me or other people that have that privilege to feel bad about it, it's to recognize that other people don't have it and to try to bring them up with you.
Last one.
Well,
Go ahead.
I definitely think me being Hispanic, I definitely have an advantage because of something like affirmative action. I'm first choice. An Asian has to bake higher on the SAT than I have to, and I'll still get picked because of my color. And I don't think that's fair at all. That's making us see color, and I just don't think that's fair. It's creating racial.
So I don't believe this whole just because you were born into a white family, you're automatically privileged thing. I was born into a very poor family. We were scraping together money for Taco Bueno. You know, I don't believe that just because you were born into a white family, you automatically have all this privilege. So,
I feel like it's kind of bad to view it that way because there are some things where you do have more advantages, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have all the privilege. You have all the things that help you get where you need to be, but there are some people who have that disadvantage because they are not white, and I think that it's important to recognize that.
I believe that there are also some people of other races that have more, you know, like he was saying with affirmative action, they would get chosen before other people in college that have worked their butts off for it.
And this is probably going to piss everyone off in this room, but white women benefit from affirmative action more than anyone else, and that's a fact. You can all look it up. Yes, I'm serious. I'm serious.
One thing that I'm hearing is like just because you're white doesn't mean that you have been disadvantaged, and I do agree with that. And the what I believe is that like white people, just you can be disadvantaged and be white. It's just the issues you face in life. I don't believe will ever be because of your race. Like other people, they're seen as your race. But I think as a white person, yes, you might face poverty and like terrible things like everyone else, but you'll never be held back because you're white.
Just to kind of touch on what you said, I was also raised in a very low-income home. You know, my mom didn't finish college, and my dad hadn't finished college even when he was raising me. And so I think he actually later graduated as I was a senior in high school, and finally to make the income that he wanted. And so for me, that it kind of showed me growing up when he did that at a later age, you know, that you can do it. And, you know, sometimes the resources may not be good, you know, at the start. But for me, I think it's an act of tenacity. And I think regardless of where you're at, if you want it, go get it. You know, and one of the stories that I love is Dr. Ben Carson. What a phenomenal story that he had. And if you want it, go get it.
You're a white male. Does she have the same opportunities that you do as a black female?
I believe yes.
How many of you agree with him? Raise your hands. How many of you disagree with him? Raise your hands. You had them with you. You were so close. Let's go. Microphones down. Grab your dials. We'll do one more set of this, and then I'll turn it over to you all. Let's go to the next one, please. Everyone at 50.
It is an amazing document. When you think about our country,
this is the Constitution.
Unlike most countries, we're not all of the same race or the same religion. We don't all come from the same places. Many of us are immigrants. But what holds us all together is a belief in certain ideals and certain values. And the Constitution really is what sets us apart by saying that every single person is treated with respect. Every single individual has certain rights, and that the government has to follow certain rules in how it interacts with its citizens. And so it sets out a model not only for our democracy, but also for how each of us have certain individual freedoms and certain rights that can't be broken. So, you know, the best example is...
Back to 50, please.
Start each day with a task completed. Find someone to help you through life. Respect everyone. Know that life is not fair and that you will fail often. But if you take some risks, step up when the times are the toughest, face down the bullies, lift up the downtrodden, and never, ever give up. If you do these things, the next generation and the generations that follow will live in a world far better than the one we have today. And what started here will indeed have changed the world for the better. Thank you very much. Hook 'em horns.
Okay. Andrew, do we need to do one more dial? Okay. I'll take 3 questions from you, and then we'll call it an evening. And we're going to go right there. You're first.
My question is this. As a single mom now, 22 years, my son is a 10-year-old white male. And based on your thoughts today, what does his future look like when he is your age?
Go ahead.
I think it's positive. I think things are moving forward, and I think your son has a great future as an American ahead of him.
I definitely think it's positive, but only if you teach him what's right in the world, and only if he works hard, and only if he wants it.
It's whatever he makes of it, with the support of not only our system and administration that we're under, but especially with his family. And you must be doing a great job at it. And we all have obstacles. I'm not going to say we all have limits. And if it was easy, we'd all be doing it.
I mean, he's gonna be fine, right? Like, you're in this room, like, he has, like, funding, like, he's gonna be totally okay. Like, there's no, like, people coming to knock on your door or taking away the white men. Like, it's just a conversation about, like, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, like, black people didn't have generational wealth. They couldn't own, like, properties that were valuable because of redlining, so they couldn't fund, like, college education well. Like, you can do that. That's the conversation. There's no issue with white dudes inherently. It's just a conversation about how to behave in a society that is multicultural.
Can I interrupt you? You made an assumption. You assumed that I am rich and that I have something to give to my son. So we have to not think, do not think of a stereotype of why I'm here and who I am, because necessarily I am not that to be able to give that to my son. So I just wanted you to know, don't make that assumption.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I made an assumption about this room. I don't really know what's going on. Yeah, I'm sorry.
The teacher in me just had to stand up and
Yeah, no worries. I'm sorry.
The fact that they hear the applause, and they have an idea of what's going on here, and the fact that they are willing to speak up and willing to state their point of view is remarkable. You are to be commended for what you did. Next question. And by the way, we should do this where there's a microphone so they can do it right here.
Let me ask you, earlier when you guys were saying that you want the message to be positive, and one thing that I noticed with the media is everything's clickbait, with the only thing that you're clicking on are the things that are negative. How should we get that message across to you?
Anybody?
I think the biggest thing is start calling things what they are, right? When you wanted to get my Republican grandfather fired up, you would talk about Obamacare. But when you want to get someone else fired up about healthcare that works for most people, you call it the Affordable Care Act. And so just by talking in a way that makes sense and talking in a way that's consistent is huge. Because you can't just use inflammatory rhetoric when it's convenient and when you're on the Senate floor going for your TV clip.
Each one of you, and cameras get this, I'm going to start with you. And by the way, what happened to you has happened to me so many times in public.
Oh, yeah, I'm not hurt.
I don't want to.
I'm upset that I offended her. Yeah.
So, a word or phrase to describe the media. A word or phrase to describe the press. I'm going to start with you. We're going to go all the way down, and then we're going to come back. So keep the microphone moving.
Yeah, business.
Biased.
Skewed. Foundational.
Flawed.
Divisive.
Monotonous.
False.
Bias.
They instigate.
Disillusioned. Polarizing.
Joke.
Propaganda.
Deceptive.
In it for the cash.
A check on power.
Blatantly dishonest.
Manipulating.
Mass hysteria.
Corporate.
Go ahead.
First of all, as a 20-year Air Force veteran, I want to say thank you very much because 17% more people voted that were under the age of 22 than the average person. That's all you guys. And second of all, so thank you. Second of all, I was watching the patient interactions. Regardless of where you at in your opposition, where I was at your age wasn't even close. So your knowledge just blows my mind away.
Ask the question.
My question is that education is very predominant for millennials, but ultimately, what brings people to the polls at your age?
What mattered most to you when you were voting? But you got to answer quickly.
Information. So a lot of politicians are starting to now realize that policy matters, and they're starting to actually talk to folks about policy instead of talking about this person is racist, so vote for me. Instead of doing that, politicians are starting to realize that policy matters to young folks, and that's why a lot of folks went to the polls this year.
Go ahead.
What made me go to the polls is that I felt antagonized. When I turn on Fox News and Laura Ingraham is saying to successful male black athletes, shut up and dribble, that's gonna make me pissed and go to the polls.
Go ahead. Because you're going to vote for the first time in a matter of months.
I think tragedy is going to bring me to the polls. The amount of school shootings that's happened to kids my age. And last year, when I was a junior and Parkland happened, I cried for weeks. Right? I was so angry I couldn't vote in these elections, but I'm going to be voting in every poll. So.
Policy brought me to the polls this year, and the reason why, my family was directly affected by the Kilauea eruption. And when that happened, I had the opportunity to see what could happen when undocumented people were arriving at our emergency shelters and taking advantage of what my family and my community actually needed. And I was also inspired by seeing Tulsi at the time. I wouldn't say I'm a fan, but how she was able to interact with people across the aisles and how it brought everyone together. You asked earlier what would be a good example of, I guess, rhetoric we could have. That would be an excellent example of how we came together in the face of those issues. And what's bringing me to the polls this year is the immigration in the state of Texas as well. because I've seen what can happen if things are not run well.
I'm going to be honest, fear of what the country could become brought me to the polls.
Okay, next question.
I just have a real simple question for everybody. I am just wondering, maybe a raise of hands or whatever, if you believe in truth that is unchanging.
Do you guys understand the question?
Okay, do you believe in relativism, or do you believe that there are truths that are true regardless of time, area you live in, where you live, whatever? Do you believe in truth, or do you believe in relativism?
Who believes in absolute truth? Raise your hands. And who does not? You're up.
I noticed that when Michelle Obama was up, that pretty much the whole group agreed, but when President Trump was up, they didn't. But I'd like to ask the left-leaning members up here what it is about what he actually said that made you so negative.
For me, I think it was more of the fact that I know what he's done, and it kind of felt very deceiving coming from him. It didn't feel truthful to me, so that's why I agreed with the message he was saying, but I didn't agree that he necessarily believes that's what he was saying.
Somebody else?
I personally, on that specific video, I agreed with what he was saying. They both were saying pretty much bipartisan things, like unity across but knowing what he's done, I think it's really hard for people who are left-leaning to be able to have a positive view of stuff he's saying when he twists so many words around.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see both text and just do like a text comparison, right? Because I feel like what both of them said was very, very true, very, very bipartisan. But again, that definitely clouds our judgment of who those people are.
So we're going to wrap this up, and I'll give 6 of you. And think of those who've not spoken up much. And that's what I've been trying to do, is to get everyone into this. 6 of you, what do you want them to know about your life, about your relationship to your country, about your relationship to the Constitution and the principles that we were founded on, and about the future? You can take it in any direction. What do you want them to know? 6 of you. Who wants to start? Right there.
I come from really not a upper middle class family. My mom was 19 when I was born. My dad was 20. My mom had to drop out of college when she was pregnant with me. And when my dad passed away when I was 8, my mom shortly after lost her job in the recession. And my job as an American is to face the adversity I have, to conquer all these challenges, all these obstacles I've been thrown in my way, and conquer them and make the most of myself that I can.
So as a more democratic person, I want this room to just realize that all Democrats aren't out to get this country. They're not all the enemy. They're not all evil. They're not for open borders because we want illegal immigrants to kill your kids. No, that's not what Democrats are. And conversely, if you're a Democrat out there, I want you guys to realize that all Republicans aren't racist. All Republicans aren't anti-Semitic. And I think if we realize that we all want a better country, we just have different ways to get there that we can all unite and disagree respectfully.
So I just want to bring a different perspective into this conversation. I come from a very religious family. I am very religious myself. My family has very conservative values, but I do want to address that we do not identify with the current politics of the right-leaning political party as it is right now. And although we do believe in a lot of the conservative values, we cannot stand behind what this administration is doing and the current, the way the country is going. I love this country and I really want what's best for it, but I just feel that the way that things are going now is not, it's not going in a good direction.
Okay. So I grew up with two very successful parents. I have two older sisters, both top 8%, top 11 of the class of Allen High School. Really smart sisters. I actually did not graduate from Allen. I was sent to a boarding school for therapy reasons. I was suicidal at the age of 17. I tried to commit myself when I was 7. I think it's important that mental illness is talked about, because I definitely think it is not talked about, and I think it's a really big issue that needs to be talked about. When I was 17, I was also sent to a wilderness program where I lived outside, and that was supposed to help me figure out how to not be depressed. I got frostbite out there. I didn't learn how to not be depressed. Mental illness is such a big issue that is not being talked about, and that's so important to be talked about.
I was gonna say,
to kind of add on what some of the other people were saying about family division, you know, I'm sort of lucky in a way that I support Trump and most of my family does, but some of my friends and acquaintances that don't, you know, they pretty much drew a line in the sand in 2016, so I kind of had to sacrifice a lot, and I just think that it was a calculated risk. I know that he's like polarizing and such, but I think that even though he lies, you know, a lot and he's crazy, he does touch on the most important issues, and I think what he says does resonate, and he is actually a good leader and a good president. So,
As someone who's not even registered to vote yet, what message do you want to leave them?
Okay, so my family is also, I also come from an upper middle class family and with 2 older sisters, and I'm also lucky because my sisters and I are both, we're all Democrat, but my parents are all Republican. And my sister actually worked on the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2016. But we're really lucky that my parents supported her, even though they are very Republican, and they were happy for her to be pursuing what her dream is. So I think we can all kind of take a lesson from that even if we have different viewpoints, we can still be able to support each other and know we want the best for each other.
Last comment.
No matter what background we come from, there are rules and regulations in this country that allow all of us to prosper to the best of our individual abilities and so on. And I think it's very important that, especially when this particular group is coming of age to vote and make these decisions, that in a world that's very driven by a biased media, no matter which way it goes, we make sure we're putting the right people on the front lines to represent how these rules and regulations can benefit us and make sure those points are communicated effectively.
Please show them our appreciation for them being here.